I knew Jeff was going to be a problem the second he called our biggest client low-hanging fruit. But even before that circus rolled in, my world was spreadsheets, contract red lines, and bulletproof paper trails. Not glamorous, not headline-grabbing, but solid. I was the firewall in heels. 8 years of holding the line, translating lawyerese into practical English, and keeping our largest account. Fortune 100 client with lawyers that probably bill in 15-second increments, happy, compliant, and lawsuit-free. I wasn't flashy, never needed to be. While salespeople chased quotas and VPs played dress-up for all-hands meetings, I was the reason legal slept at night. Every major deal, clause, or change, especially with this client, ran through me and got CC'd to legal. Like a reflex, like breathing. Our compliance contact over there, Marissa, even joked once that I was her contractual spirit animal. We had a rhythm, tight, cautious, and dry as toast, but God did it work. And maybe that's the problem. My kind of work doesn't feel exciting until it's too late. It's the seatbelt you hate until the crash. So most days I sat there in my ergonomic chair, sipping cold coffee, watching the storm clouds gather around other people's messes, knowing mine wouldn't be one of them. Which is why what came next hit like a freight train full of unpaid invoices and ego cologne. And hey, before we dive face first into the legal meat grinder, just a quick thing. If you're one of the 90% listening to stories like this without subscribing, why? You're already here. One click helps the team way more than you think. And a like? That's like a virtual espresso shot for our editor who hasn't slept since Tuesday. All right, back to the paperwork massacre, so here's how it worked. When sales cooked up some new strategic pivot, I was the one who quietly asked, have we looped legal in? When a new product feature tiptoed into gray area territory, I flagged it with a polite per our agreement section 14C. I wasn't trying to slow things down. I was trying to make sure the boat didn't sink from the inside, and it worked. No lawsuits, no breach notices. Our client's compliance liaison sent me thank you emails that read like love letters, at least in corporate terms. Appreciate the clarity and foresight on the DPA revision. That's as romantic as it gets in my line of work. Internally, I was the calm in the chaos. The kind of person people only noticed when they needed something impossible done yesterday. I didn't gossip. I didn't go to lunch with the cool kids. I didn't network. But if a deal was hanging by a thread because someone didn't read Clause 9A, I was the one who had already highlighted it and emailed it and filed it under potential catastrophes avoided. My desk wasn't by a window. I never got the good parking spot. But when it came time to renegotiate the biggest contract in our portfolio, guess who the client requested be on every call? That's right, me. Not the VP of Revenue. Not some swaggering director with a buzzword addiction. Me. For a brief, stupid moment, I thought that mattered. Then Jeff showed up. Fresh from whatever consulting clown college teaches you to say synergy with a straight face. He wore loafers with no socks and talked like LinkedIn had come to life and done a line of coke off a Gantt chart. And from day one, I could feel it. He thought I was furniture. Worse, he thought I was outdated furniture. But that comes later. In those final golden weeks before Jeff's reign of error, I was still trusted. Still looped in. Still CCing legal like my career depended on it because, spoiler alert, it did. The ship was steady, the logs were tight, and the storm hadn't hit yet. Not that anyone else could see the clouds, but I could. Jeff arrived like a drunk magician at a funeral, way too loud, too confident, and swinging around buzzwords like they were Mardi Gras beads. Didn't shake hands, he aligned synergies. Didn't introduce himself, he established velocity. Day one, he gathered the team and delivered a monologue about redefining operational agility, which I think meant ignoring all process and praying we don't get sued. And right there, with his $300 haircut and tech bro tan, I knew this guy had never lost a client and his shirt in 1 quarter, but he was about to. He zeroed in on me pretty fast. I was the only one in that room not nodding like a bobblehead during his onboarding sermon. I just sat there, arms crossed, sipping from a mug that said, "Documentation saves lives." I bought it as a joke, turned out prophetic. On week 2, he led a call with the strategic accounts team, big client updates, contract amendments, stuff that would have made my inbox light up like a Christmas tree a month ago. Instead, it was all happening without legal. I raised my hand virtually. Have we run this language by Sarah's team in legal yet? He rolled his eyes like I'd asked if we could fax it instead. Stop CCing legal on everything, it's overkill, he snapped. Not just to me in front of the entire team. It scares the client, makes us look paranoid. We're not running a courtroom, we're building relationships. I looked at the screen. I could see 3 junior account reps freeze mid-smile. One slowly backspaced a draft email that had it legal already typed in. Another pretended to drink water for a full 30 seconds. I paused, muted myself, and just stared out the window for a beat. Ohio's sky looked like wet cement. Then I unmuted, smiled, and said understood. That was it. No fight. No protest. I knew a hill when it wasn't worth dying on, especially in front of a guy who thought policies were optional and NDAs were buzzkills. But make no mistake, I felt it. That invisible tilt in the room when someone rearranges the furniture and doesn't warn you. I wasn't scared. I wasn't angry. I was something else. A low hum behind the ribs, a warning from the bones. I stopped CCing legal, not just in spirit. I physically removed the autofill from my email client. No more default at legal, no more FYIs. Jeff wanted streamlined, he'd get silence. And I watched. I watched how fast things changed when no one checked the fine print. Jeff started fast-tracking contract updates, telling the team we were too valuable to get bogged down in red tape. He called me once to ask if we could just remove some of that indemnity junk from the client renewal. I told him politely that indemnity junk is why we weren't bankrupt. He laughed. You're adorable, but we're playing a different game now. Cool. Just let me know when the penalties start stacking up like pancakes at a truck stop. From that moment on, I became a ghost. Not in the spooky sense, more like I faded from Jeff's world. I was no longer looped into strategy calls. My advice, once treated like gold-plated policy, became background noise. At one point, he told the team, we're all adults here. Use your judgment. We don't need to ask mommy legal every time we sneeze. I stared at my monitor and wrote the date down. Just the date. It felt like something future me might want to revisit. I wasn't going to play the martyr. I wasn't going to storm his office and scream about compliance. No, I'm not built like that. I'm built like granite, quiet, immovable, and excellent at erosion, so I followed instructions. I stopped involving legal. I watched our client account get more tangled by the day. And every time something looked off, I made a note, not public, not dramatic, just a tidy little log. No noise, no resistance. Just the slow, steady click of a chess piece moving into position. It started with a Slack message at 6:04 a.m. Big news coming, be ready to move fast. No salutation, no punctuation, just a command like we were a pack of caffeinated wolves. And by 9:15, Jeff was screen sharing a deck titled Expansion Initiative, Accelerated Win-Back Strategy. It had animated bullet points, confetti gifs, and at least one slide with a fist bump emoji. I swear on every red line I've ever tracked. The plan? Push a rapid expansion with our largest client, double the user volume, roll out new data capabilities, ignore the original timelines, and get them signed by Friday. Never mind that the contract limited scale-outs without pre-approved security audits and strict localization protocols for their EU data. Jeff called those legacy bottlenecks. I called them landmines with timestamps. Sales drank the Kool-Aid like it was bottom-shelf tequila. Jeff promised bonuses, fast-track promotions, even hinted at an off-site in Cancun. By lunch, he had the team high on velocity and allergic to due diligence. Our client's rep sent over a draft amendment at 2:37 p.m. Jeff replied within 10 minutes, looks good, let's move. No need to nitpick. We're aligned. He never ran it through legal. Never even sent it to me. I wasn't even in the loop until I overheard one of the junior reps in the break room whispering, do you think we'll get in trouble if we skip the privacy appendix? Jeff said the client's chill about it. That's when the temperature in my skull dropped to sub-zero. I walked straight to my desk, opened my personal folder, one I hadn't touched in years, and created a new doc. Client expansion risks confidential, internal notes only, and I wrote. Not emotionally, not with flair, just a surgical inventory of what Jeff was breaking and when. Clause 5.2 requires 60-day written notice for data localization expansion. No notice filed. Clause 7.1, B scaling user count beyond threshold requires revised pricing model and board sign-off. No pricing change proposed. Clause 9.4 any changes to data handling require an updated DPA. No DPA on file. No CCs. No alarms, just one woman with a keyboard and a quiet grudge. By the end of the week, I had 12 bullet points. All time-stamped. All matched with internal messages and draft documents. I didn't need to tell anyone anything. I was building a time bomb disguised as a receipt folder. Meanwhile, Jeff strutted through the office like he'd invented contracts. Sign and close, sign and close. He kept chanting like a frat boy hyping up a beer pong final. He overrode 2 internal controls meant to flag contract deviations. I know because I built one of them. I got an alert that said deviation escalated, no legal review, and 10 minutes later that alert vanished. Jeff had disabled the watchdog entirely, so I documented that too. It felt like watching someone speed through red lights in a school zone, yelling about innovation. And the worst part? Everyone wanted to believe him. Even people who should have known better nodded along. They were tired of slow deals, tired of process, tired of playing defense. Jeff sold them a shortcut and they took it like candy from a hallucinating uncle. Me? I didn't argue. I didn't email legal. I didn't forward any of it to Sarah's team. Jeff wanted clean lines of communication, so I made mine surgical. My notes grew, so did my silence. I started printing the logs at home, filing them in a manila folder labeled vacation reading. Every new document Jeff approved without oversight got its own entry. Every time he skipped a clause, ignored a flag, or told someone, let's just get it signed, I clicked save and moved on. I didn't know exactly how this would end, but I knew it was coming. You can only slap duct tape on a pressure valve so many times before something explodes. and when it did, I wanted every ounce of evidence to whisper the same quiet truth. You told me not to involve legal, so I didn't. The first time I noticed, it was subtle, a thread about a client-side technical rollout that should have landed in my inbox but didn't. I found it days later, buried in a forwarded message from a junior ops analyst who asked, "Was this supposed to bypass your review?" The second time, I was explicitly removed. Jeff replied all to a contract discussion and deleted my name from the recipient line. Not even sly about it, he just didn't want me there. Leaner comms, he'd said in the last team huddle, pacing like a wannabe Steve Jobs with a fidget spinner. Too many voices muddies the decision stream. We don't need hall monitors, we need accelerators. I smiled, nodded, even clapped a little. Then I added a new entry in my growing internal file. 4/21 proactive exclusion from data compliance discussion client expansion. Attached the forwarded email, titled it Evidence of Intentional Circumvention. Quietly, methodically, I kept the blade sharp. By May, I was persona non grata on anything forward-facing. My job title hadn't changed, but my inbox did. What used to be a flood of contract approvals and redline reviews turned into an echo chamber of calendar invites for meetings that no longer require your expertise. I'd become a ghost with a badge. That's when it happened. First threshold violation came in a mid-month internal update. The client's data environment had quietly moved to a regional cloud zone in Frankfurt, a location not listed in the original DPA. According to Clause 6.3 of the agreement, any change in data geography required a formal DPA amendment and client-side notification. Neither had occurred. The second violation came exactly 6 days later, an internal slide deck proudly proclaiming user base expansion, plus 112% since March. That might have made Jeff a hero on LinkedIn, but I knew what Clause 7.1 said. User volume above 50% expansion required a renegotiated pricing structure and board-level review. No new pricing. No board review. No alarms, except mine. I sat at my desk, 3-ring binder open, pen tapping against my notes, and stared at that slide like it was a signed confession. Then I did something I hadn't done since Jeff's little overkill speech. I sent a formal warning. Just one, just enough to keep the record whole. Jeff, VP Strategic Accounts, CC. Tanya, Ops Lead Subject. Expansion Compliance Review. Hi Jeff, noting recent developments regarding user growth and data zone migration, I want to flag 2 items that intersect with our existing contractual obligations under Agreement 2021Q3A. Specifically, Clause 6.3 requires client-side DPA amendment for data localization shifts. Clause 7.1 requires renegotiated pricing for usage over 50% baseline. We should consider pausing additional deployments until legal can advise. Let me know if you'd like me to draft a review packet. Best my name it wasn't a grenade. It was a whisper in a vault, but it existed. One immutable mark in the timeline. Jeff never replied. Tanya acknowledged receipt with a cold, corporate thanks noted. I saved the thread, PDF'd it, added it to the growing archive labeled Final Season, Jeff's Greatest Hits. Every day after that, the walls got tighter. Jeff praised self-starters who didn't wait for legal babysitting. I became the office paperweight, polite smiles, fewer invites, more thanks, but we've got it. My role wasn't just being trimmed, it was being surgically erased. And still, I wrote, every Slack thread that mentioned speed over red tape. Every contract pushed without a compliance check. Every instance where I was looped out, cut off, ignored. It went in the file. They could erase me from the calendar, strip me from CC lines, redefine my role until it was hollow. But they couldn't erase the audit trail I was building with monastic precision. No fireworks, no tantrums. Just the steady, quiet ritual of someone who's been through this dance before. You don't need to raise your voice when you're holding receipts. You just wait for the echo to reach the boardroom. The ping came in at 8:07 a.m. Calendar invite, 15 minutes subject line, restructure alignment, talent optimization. That's the kind of phrase they cook up in a glass boardroom over cold brew and cowardice. I clicked accept. I already knew. I'd seen this slow guillotine before, except this time I wasn't standing under it. I'd already stepped aside and started measuring its trajectory. 10 minutes later, through the paper-thin glass of the HR conference room, I could hear Jeff's laugh echoing like a drunk karaoke cover of success. He was on a call, celebrating, and not just with anyone. With the client's VP, my contact, my counterpart, the one who used to email me directly for clarification on every compliance change. This is what agile looks like, Jeff boomed through the wall. Clean comms, fast deployment, no drag from outdated process. I stared at my inbox, blinking slowly. There it was. The HR confirmation, as discussed, your role will be sunset as part of a strategic realignment initiative focused on forward momentum. Sunset, like I was a screensaver or a pharmaceutical side effect. My last day would be 2 weeks out. No retention offer, no handoff, just vanish politely. 5 minutes after that, Jeff called me directly. No hello, no build-up. Just his voice, syrupy with triumph. Wanted to touch base personally. Look, this isn't about performance. You've been great, solid, but we're shifting to a faster lane and we need people who can move. That last word hung in the air like bad cologne. I said nothing for full 3 seconds, just breathed in and let the room chill. Then understood. I'll initiate the wrap-up protocol. You're a pro, he said. Knew you'd get it. Appreciate you keeping this clean. Clean. That word twisted in my throat like a fishhook. I spent the rest of the day clearing files, exporting what I needed, just what was mine, just what was relevant, and backing up the logs I'd been quietly building for months. Everything stayed inside the lines. Nothing sent externally, no leaks, no drama, but my final entry was a thing of beauty. I opened a blank draft, addressed it to one internal alias only, compliance board at company name. Not legal, not Jeff, just the board's shadow inbox, one we were told to use for high-risk compliance concerns. It wasn't flashy. It didn't trigger alerts, but it got archived, it got read. Eventually. The subject line was simple: contractual risk indicator strategic accounts expansion. Inside, I attached a summary of the infractions, date-stamped, clause-tagged, cross-referenced. I didn't editorialize. I didn't predict doom. I just laid the bricks. 12 pages of noted concern, written with the tone of someone folding a flag. And then I waited. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even tell my partner that night. I came home, opened a beer, and watched the rain chew the edge of the porch. Somewhere in the dark, I felt the anger circling, but I didn't let it in. Not yet, because something colder had taken its place. Not rage, not grief. Readiness. Jeff thought he'd won. He was strutting through the company like a rooster on espresso, slapping backs, getting praise for numbers that hadn't hit yet. He had the client's VP eating out of his hand temporarily. No one was asking where the backup documentation was. No one was digging into Clause 7.1b or the DPA deviation on Frankfurt. But I knew they would, because these things always come due. Compliance doesn't yell. It whispers and then it swings. And when it did, my name would be in the file, not as a mistake, not as the forgotten voice, but as the one who warned them. It was a Thursday when Tanya messaged me, not from her company email, but from her personal Gmail. Subject line: holy shit. No greeting, no pleasantries, just a screenshot. At the top, the client's legal department logo. At the bottom, 4 bolded words: formal breach of contract. She didn't even write a message. Just the screenshot, like she was holding up a bloodied knife she didn't remember picking up. I read it 3 times, slowly. The air around me felt thinner with each pass. Breach grounds listed: failure to submit revised DPA upon infrastructure migration, unauthorized user expansion exceeding contractual volume limits, material changes enacted without formal amendment or legal approval. Estimated penalty, up to $2.6 m, with right to terminate entire agreement pending board review. The crown jewel of Jeff's expansion initiative, the $15 million agile partnership he'd used to justify gutting my role, was now sitting on a legal chopping block, and the axe was being sharpened. I didn't reply to Tanya's email. What was I gonna say? Told you so? You looped me out? I just sat there, exhale trembling, beer half warm on my desk, and stared at that client header like it was a ghost that had finally decided to knock. By noon, my phone buzzed again, this time from Ryan, one of the junior sales guys. A LinkedIn message because I was no longer internal. Did you see what happened? Legal is going nuclear. Jeff's freaking. They're saying someone warned the board? I closed the app. Let the panic echo. That afternoon, I imagined the office like a submarine with a cracked hull. Emails ricocheting like sonar pings, execs tossing around phrases like non-material breach and good faith remedy window while sweat soaked through their branded polos. And finally, after months of being the Cassandra in orthopedic flats, I was outside the blast radius. I wasn't in those meetings. I wasn't being asked for emergency documentation. I wasn't running interference between legal and sales with a forced smile and a dry throat. I was out, and oh, how they needed me now. Sarah, one of the senior legal counsels I used to CC religiously, finally got involved. I knew the exact moment she was looped in. Tanya forwarded me a reply, subject line: urgent, timeline of client expansion activity. Sarah's response: why weren't we notified? Where are the compliance flags? Was legal ever consulted? They weren't rhetorical questions. She knew the answer. Everyone did, but now the answers had consequences. I pictured Jeff in that meeting, face tight, collar damp, trying to spin phrases like lean innovation into legal defense. I pictured the ops team scrambling to assemble emails they were never copied on, trying to reverse engineer a trail I had already built, sealed, and submitted like a gentle curse. And most of all, I pictured the moment when someone, probably an overworked paralegal or risk analyst, finally stumbled across my final email, one I'd sent 24 hours before my termination. The one with bullet points, clause citations, and dates. No legal CC, just the board compliance alias, per instructions. I didn't text anyone that day. I didn't post a cryptic meme on LinkedIn or send a thinking of you note to Jeff. I just sat back, cracked a new beer, and played the breach notice like a lullaby. There's a silence that comes after fire alarms and screaming, the kind where everything is still smoking and no one knows who's in charge anymore. That's the silence they were in now. And I was watching from the shore. Dry, distant, done, not vindictive, just right. The investigation didn't start with a bang, it began with a checklist. Legal's version of a crime scene diagram. They weren't screaming, they were sorting. Unwrapping Jeff's agile masterpiece one thread at a time and finding out it was more duct tape than design. From what Tanya told me, because by now she was sending nightly updates like a war correspondent, the legal team began reconstructing the deal flow. Contract edits, email threads, Slack approvals, the works. They were searching for that golden thing everyone pretends they want but secretly fears: accountability. And what they found instead was a vacuum. No legal reviews, no documented escalations, no flagged violations in the official pipeline. Just glossy slide decks, rubber-stamped approvals, and Jeff's voice memos telling sales to keep legal at arm's length. They'll just slow us down. But it didn't stay quiet for long. One junior legal associate, Alina, I think her name was sifting through the compliance audit archive when she noticed something odd. A single email sent directly to the compliance board at Alias. Subject line: Contractual risk indicators strategic accounts expansion. Timestamped exactly 10:24 a.m., the day before my final sign-off. No bells, no CCs, just a precision missile that had been sitting there unnoticed, waiting to detonate. She opened it. Inside, 12 pages, bullet points, clause numbers, dates, evidence of breach, risk forecasts, all signed with my name at the bottom in my usual dry, surgical tone. No drama, no accusations, just the kind of documentation that makes lawyers sit up straighter and VPs start sweating through their dress shirts. Tanya said the room went silent. Legal had been asking, who knew? And now the answer was staring them in the face. I did, and I said so, before it happened, before I was cut. But they hadn't seen it because I followed orders. Jeff had said, don't involve legal, so I didn't. I followed protocol. I sent it to the board Alias, as instructed in our internal documentation for compliance escalation. They couldn't ignore it now. Alina brought it to Sarah, the senior counsel. Sarah read it, twice, said nothing, just highlighted 3 sections and forwarded it to the GC with the note: this changes the timeline, because it did. My email reset the clock. Suddenly, this wasn't an unfortunate oversight, it was a preventable breach. A documented warning ignored. Bullet fired and dodged, until it curved midair and came back around. Jeff had framed the situation as a group learning opportunity. We all missed it. But the moment that email hit the board's radar, the narrative cracked in half. He missed it, because he had told the one person with their hand on the brake to stop pulling it. Tanya told me the executive thread lit up after that. GC weighing in. Risk management looping in finance. Someone pulled the data logs. My email was opened, downloaded, added to the investigation file. And the best part? It didn't sound like revenge. It didn't feel personal. It was clean, professional, deadly, like a scalpel. There's a special kind of power in knowing the arrow you let fly quietly months ago is still moving, still spinning through the air while your enemies pretend they've already won. And then it lands, not with a scream, not with blood. Just a simple echoing, she warned you. I didn't need to show up. I didn't need to testify. My part was done. The arrow was in flight. Now all I had to do was wait for the sound it would make when it hit the wall behind Jeff's smirk. They booked the boardroom on a Sunday. That alone told you the storm wasn't passing, it had arrived. Emergency session, full quorum, no catered lunch, no small talk, just suits, silence, and the quiet dread of a company realizing it's been driving blindfolded through a minefield. Jeff showed up early. Tanya said he was pacing outside the glass doors, phone glued to his ear, trying to look in control but pulling at the collar of his shirt like it was choking him. Maybe it was. Inside, the GC opened the session with a phrase that only lands 2 ways, either with relief or ruin: we have clarity. They went through the timeline. Legal laid it all out, slide by slide. Each decision Jeff made, each contract violation, each opportunity to flag legal that was bypassed in favor of speed. Sarah from legal delivered the presentation like a funeral eulogy, calm, grim, factual, and then she held up the printout, my email, the 12-page document I'd submitted to the board compliance Alias the day before my last day. This is the earliest formal escalation we have on file, Sarah said, turning the paper so everyone could see my name on the from line. It details every material risk, matched to contract language, with citations and timelines. She paused, then added, she followed instructions. Legal was removed from communication. She complied with internal protocol by escalating directly to the board Alias. Then the GC spoke, slow, deliberate, voice flat as concrete. We've confirmed the breach is legitimate under contract terms. We have no legal buffer, no advisory trail, no formal mitigation. The client is within their rights to terminate and impose penalty clauses. Estimated loss $50 million minimum. Silence. Jeff, who had been shifting in his seat like a child too big for the chair, finally spoke, or tried to. Okay, wait, this wasn't sabotage. This was a process breakdown. We were operating lean. That was the mandate. I inherited legacy bottlenecks. She was part of that. I mean, respectfully, she didn't involve legal either. He motioned toward my name on the printout like it was a weapon pointed at him. The GC didn't even blink. She was told not to in a team-wide call. Multiple witnesses confirmed. She adjusted behavior per that directive, and she still flagged the risks internally using the designated channel, which, again, you requested legal be removed from. Sarah followed up. Voice like steel under silk. You don't get to amputate your brakes and then blame the driver when the car crashes. Another silence. This one heavier. Someone on the board cleared their throat, but no one spoke. Tanya said Jeff's face had gone the color of dishwater. He was blinking like he had something in his eye, but everyone knew it was just panic short-circuiting the spin machine in his head. Board chair finally leaned forward and asked, "Did you understand that her role required legal oversight on all client expansion initiatives?" Jeff nodded. "Yes, but did you remove that function?" A longer pause, then a nod, smaller. "Yes, then this breach is yours." There was no argument after that, just rustling papers, someone coughing, the sound of power shifting chairs. The arrow had landed. But the damage, still spreading, the air in the boardroom wasn't just tense. It was thick, thick like molasses, made of dread and dotted with the faint smell of Jeff's desperation. Tanya said you could hear the hum of the projector louder than anyone breathing. Every eye was fixed on the screen at the end of the long oak table, where a single email glowed in white light. From my name to Compliance Board at Company Subject. Contractual Risk Indicator Strategic Accounts Expansion Date. The day before I was terminated CC. None that last part. That empty CC line? It may as well have been a gravestone. The board chair leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low but sharp enough to slice marble. "You told her not to involve legal." Jeff tried to smile. A twitch really, more like a facial glitch. Well, yes, but look, the point was to streamline, not to, nobody expected." The lawyer cut him off. "Calm, precise, lethal. Then you assumed the legal burden and lost us $15 million. Jeff blinked twice. No comeback, no corporate speak. Just his mouth hanging open like a car alarm that didn't know it was broken. Sarah turned to the board and continued. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a willful removal of standard legal process. The subject of that removal, she nodded toward my name, acted within protocol. She warned you. She documented risk. She did everything short of setting the fire alarm off in the parking lot. Tanya said no one moved. No one spoke. You don't interrupt when the guillotine drops. Jeff reached for his water like it might save him. His hands were shaking. The glass clinked against the table, echoed louder than his last defense. I didn't think it would escalate. The GC didn't even turn to him. Just addressed the board. There is no ambiguity here. This wasn't a systemic issue. This was one man dismantling a safety protocol because he thought process was beneath him. This breach and its financial consequences are isolated and traceable. The documentation is unambiguous. And then, as if choreographed by some divine sense of irony, the projector auto-refreshed and reloaded the email. The whole thing, my name, the timestamp, every bullet point, every clause reference, all of it hanging above Jeff like scripture. He sat back, slumped, pale as drywall. His forehead glistened. His fingers tapped nervously against his slacks. The back of his neck had gone blotchy red. Tanya said he looked like he wanted to evaporate, but there was nowhere to go. The final silence lasted nearly a full minute. Then the board chair closed his folder, stood, and said to no one in particular, "Let the record reflect, we were warned." That was it. No yelling, no slammed fists, no dramatic exits, just silence, broken only by the soft click of laptops closing and chairs sliding back across the floor. As the room emptied, Jeff sat there, alone, staring at the screen, my name still glowing like the last match in a blackout. No CCs, no legal, just consequences. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.